Good evening. Welcome to the Sweet Talk. Today is Monday, November 2nd, 2020. I am your host, Kim Matina, and I am a Google certified trainer and educator, as well as a technology teacher. And today I have on the show Miss Sarah Kiefer. She is a technology integration specialist for the Ross Local School District in Ohio. And she is also a Google certified innovator, trainer, and educator, as well as many other things that we share. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, Kim. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. I'm really looking forward to learning from you. I know we've connected on Twitter, the PLN or the PLF, the professional learning family, they say on Twitter. But I know when you said you wanted to be on, I was really excited because you share a lot of great resources and you have so much to share. And I think nowadays anything that you can pick up on is always going to help and benefit you. So I know you have one of your favorite apps is Google Slides. Yes. And I know you have a lot of great information that you want to share. So without further ado, let's talk about Google Slides.
Let's jump in because
jump in.
You can see above my head, my motto is doing my part to help inspire and positively impact education. And that's been truly my passion. My husband was actually the one that encouraged me to start a blog. He's like, why don't you share this out? My curriculum director was like, you need to present more, share this stuff out. And so thanks to a lot of the people in my life, I've jumped out there and it's been received really well. The big idea for me though is, as my website says, it's tech you can do. Using technology doesn't have to be these big, wild, crazy, endeavors. It can be as simple as, using a Google slide like we're going to talk about today in a little bit different of a way. What I've come to realize is a lot of people just accept technology at its face value. So like Google Slides, for example, it's a presentation tool. Oh, it's like PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is. But if that's all you ever see it as, you're missing out on so many different things. And that's where I really kind of push teachers, push myself, people that I talk to, don't just think of Google Slides as a presentation tool. You have to go beyond all of that. And the same can be said for any of the Google tools, right? I love them all, but Slides is just incredibly versatile for anything and everything that a teacher especially could want to do. And we learned that in the spring really well. In my building, I work in 2 elementary buildings, so it's pre-K to 4. So our 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade teachers were already heavily invested in using Google Classroom, so they were able to just continue that. Our kindergarten, 1st grade teachers were less in on Google Classroom, and it was at that point that a lot of my 1st grade teachers were like, oh man, I really think I want to do Google Classroom. I'm like, guys, we can't be assured that they'll know how to log in and get them joined. And this is kind of a rough spot. So we went in a little bit different of a direction in the springtime because they were like, well, I want them to do these activities. A lot of them using Slides as their basis.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I love that you say, it's so versatile. I try to tell people you have to think out of the box.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a great way of going into how you would use it that way, because like you said, people think of it as a presentation tool, and it's so much more than that.
It is. And if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I presented, or I prepped a little presentation for this. I just couldn't help myself. I just had this thought this morning. I was like, I need to make a presentation. I need to share something.
I do the same thing. Don't worry. It keeps me focused on what I'm talking about.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. So you let me know if.
Okay, you're good. So you can share whatever you want to share now.
So I'm going to put me in the background. Okay, so can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so This is probably the most common use of slides, right? A presentation. So I've got, my title, 5 sweet slide tips. I just couldn't resist.
I like that.
Resist. I've got myself, I've got my little credentials over here. So my website, you want to connect with me on Twitter, feel free, right? Beautiful beginning, simple. That's wonderful. Well, I've got, as you can see over here, 5 sweet slides tips for you. So the first thing, and you can see it because I'm in editing mode. I haven't shared this out. I haven't presented this, but you see that slides icon and you see a number. So they're layered. That's a great thing. But
okay, yep.
Here's really where I get that nerdy giddiness here is I cover over it completely. And this is just a clear, transparent shape. And when I learned about clear, transparent shapes on top of things so that I can link,
so people don't move the icon or the number.
Right. And then when you go into present mode, they can't click on the icon. They can't click on the number because I've covered over them.
Yeah, yeah. And it actually gives the user more, they don't have to be directly on the number or that white little box on the icon. They can actually they have more flexibility where they can click.
Right. So I'm always purposefully making that clear shape bigger than that space. On the computer, if you're on your phone, it's one thing. I think of fat fingers, but when you're on the computer, especially when you're dealing with children and the age group that I deal with, they're not always good about getting right on that particular spot, right? So I always give them a little bit of extra space. Then you can see I've done that for each of these.
And you just added a transparent shape?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So
I've done that before too, but I did text boxes. So I would add a text box over the icon instead of the shape, but that's a good idea.
I like the transparent shapes because a lot of times the icons that I use are not the straight rectangles or squares. So I love that the shapes give you so many other versatile, so if you had a cross that you were trying to use as a marker for linking to move on to something else. I just love these little shapes here. Now, this shape could just be a solid color. You could put text in it and still that shape links out. But I like that the clear, transparent, it just goes away. No one even knows that they're there.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think that's a great tip. I do like that because it kind of I don't want to say it don't take it this way, but it dummy proofs it a little bit.
But that's exactly what it,
because adults have, you can't assume that adults are tech savvy and right. They're going to click on the right thing too. So I love that tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah. So you can see obviously I'm in editing mode. You can see the blue boxes, right? But if I were to go into present mode, and here's another thing that I really like this takes over my entire screen. I like coming down and it's the inverse square on the slides navigation bar. I click that and then it pops me back out just into my Chrome window. That's not a slides tip per se, but I guess it kind of is. But now I can have access to all of my other tabs that I have open. But when you come here, notice it turns into a hand, but you can't see any of the blue square.
Right. Yep. No, it's a great tip. I love it.
So when I click that, this is really what blows a lot of people away the first time that I show it to them. Is because slides don't have to just be this standard rectangle. I think it's a 16 to 9 ratio.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
And a lot of people just they take it for face value, right? So I always suggest to teachers stop and think about when you're going to use a Google slide. Number one, you really have to nail what it is that you're trying to do with this slide. Obviously, if you're doing a presentation, a 16 by 9 is going to fit a computer screen nicely. If you're doing a project with kids that you are anticipating that you want to print at some point, maybe to hang up in the hallways, to send home as evidence of what the students are doing. maybe it's a major project that the kids are responsible for doing, teaching them how they can adjust the size of the page. And they go like, wow, how did you?
Yeah. And I think too that that's a good point too, Sarah, because like if you're dealing with like infographics or even like, you know, newsletters that have that longer that, you know, the longer width or height, you can do that. You can adjust it right in your Google Slides, and each slide that you add will have that size. That's a, you know, that I think you're right. I think a lot of people, they do overlook that because they don't think of slides as something that can be used that way. They think of it more like as a presentation tool. This is my screen size and this is what I'm presenting, and that's it. So I'm so glad that you're bringing that up, because I think a lot of people do overlook that.
And it is such a simple, easy thing to do, right? You go to File in the menu, and you go almost all the way to the bottom where it says Page Setup. And again, here, this is where stop and think about what your end product needs to look like. For example, I worked with a third grade teacher and her students, and they really loved the books like What If You Had Animal Ears by Sandra Merkel, I think I said her name right. And the kids wanted to create their own version. They were going to do their own research and all that kind of stuff. And they wanted to make their book like those square books. Do you remember like when we were like, those were like the rage because they weren't your typical traditional portrait or landscape style. They wanted it to be like a squared off book. So I was like, well, we can totally do that in slides. And they were like, really, how?
Change the page size.
And do the, you know, the custom. And here's where I'm always looking as a former classroom teacher, how can I bring in other contents? And we literally stopped at this point because I said to the kids, I said, how big do you want this? And they were like, well, what do you mean?
They didn't know. Yeah.
So we got out rulers. They went to the classroom bookshelves. They grabbed a couple of books and they started measuring. And we were able to incorporate a little bit of measurement. Granted, I mean, it's not massively hard hitting or whatever, but they were looking at books in a different manner and seeing how really like books could be whatever shape that they wanted. So, you know, customizing this, so it could be a 10 by 10. And obviously if your end goal is to print this out, you have to be respectful of the size of printer and options that you have on this, right? Like that's your limitation.
Right.
But then when you apply it, it goes and it completely changes the feel. And it did for these kids. Like when they looked at it, they were like, oh, wow. Yeah. It's a small change, but for a lot of people, it's a huge change.
Yeah, because it opens opportunities for them, right? So, you know, again, like something that simple could make others think out of the box, right? You know, so that's great. And it sparked them to create their books using the page setup this way.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and because they went into it and they said, I want to create it to look like this. And I mean, could we have left it as an 8.5 by 11 and then just cut off? Sure.
Yeah.
How cool is it to go ahead and just make it like that?
Yeah. But then you're teaching them something new. So it's, you know, now they know how to do it for next time.
Right. So my next sweet tip, and again, this is something that I absolutely adore, is the word art. And I love showing it to kids, but in a way I'm a little hesitant to show it to kids because then they want to play with it. So when I talk to teachers, I'm like, there's more than text boxes out there. I said, but we have to understand that they're going to want to play with this. They're going to want to explore with this. And that's not a bad thing. We just have to build that time in to allow them to do that. I said, otherwise they're never going to truly like grasp it to understand the power of word art. And when I show kids word art, first of all, it's insert word art. And if anybody's familiar with the Microsoft tools, it feels pretty similar. It's been so long since I've used them, so I'm not going to tell you that it's exactly the same. But I tell them, like, you know, here are text boxes, And I usually start the kids off with typing in their name, right? So they can really kind of manipulate it and it not be something, necessarily for a project. So you hit enter and you've got your name there. And then we talk about, what can you do with a text box and how can you do that if you can do that with word art? So the first thing, obviously, they want to play with the fonts. I'm like, great, let's do it. So you come up here, you pick a different font, and this part is where you start getting into, it'll take a little bit of time because the kids want to change this. And then they're like, oh, that's so cool. And then they're like, well, why do I want to change the size? I'm like, okay, so again, here, let's layer in a little bit of math, right? Subconsciously, or maybe you explicitly are layering this in. Do we talk proportions? Because with text boxes, you're changing numbers of font sizes, like a 14 to a 16 or up to a 500, right? You always have the kids that go way above and beyond. But with word art, you talk to them about changing it proportionally. Like, do you want it to be as wide as your slide? Shifting it, like really stretching it out that way. And this is how kids always want to do it from the middle. And then when I show them, when you come from the side, I said, look, guys, you can do them at the same time. You can stretch it really long still and out to the side. I love showing them and that you can completely alter what this actually looks like. And they get so excited about this because it's not, oh, I want to change it up to an 18 or I want to go to a 48, that kind of thing. They just literally are stretching it to be exactly what they want on their page. And then when I blow their minds one more time, I said, now hold your shift key. And I know you know this because I think I remember you and Carol talking about this on when she was on with drawings. If you hold the shift key and you pull out, it changes it proportionally. So it's stretching it at the same proportion that it's, making it tall. I'm not a math teacher, so I hope that I said that in a manner that's not too disgraceful. Like talking to the kids about proportions with your shapes and your colors and your sizes and all that kind of stuff. And they get it when they can see it and they're the ones maneuvering it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I know, I'm in a middle school and the kids, they tend to grab the anchor from the middle and then they drag it up. They never take it from the corner. And I do tell them the same thing, like grab from the corner because it'll actually keep it where it's not going to distort it. But that's interesting that you said that because I think maybe just it's like a natural reaction, like the kid, you just go to the center. I don't think you think about going to the corner or the side, But yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it has to be something just naturally that you just go right to the middle. I don't know what else it could be.
I think to like top and bottom, right? We teach them those directional words, top, bottom, left, right. I don't know that we talk too much about corners.
No, I know. I never did until, I was showing them even to change the size of an image, you want to grab it from the corner so it keeps it where it's not going to distort and get the picture stretched or whatnot, So yeah, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's just, reading top, bottom. I don't know.
I also think that they're a lot more the ones on the top, on the bottom, and the left and right. I think they're a little bit more visual, or like they're a little more like visible, like right
in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The corners, they're almost expected. So they just kind of fade out. I don't know. I think it's a lot of Jedi mind tricks. And it's only until you explicitly say this to them, like, hey guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
For word art, it works for, like you said, like images. And that is a huge one for the kids, is when you show them, grab it from the corner and you don't get these, these cute little puppy dog faces that are like smooshed,
stretched out, or yeah, exactly.
What happened to my picture? I'm like, guys, come on.
Yeah. See, the kids are all the same everywhere.
Well, and I think it's because, when we step them into this, I think at a point there's the assumption that somebody else has taught them this, that, or whatever skill. And then we go, oh, well, nobody taught them this.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit of error on our part, but
this is true. I can agree to that to a point.
yeah.
We do expect the kids to know more than we think they know because they're digital natives, but we have to stop assuming that. And actually, they need to incorporate a curriculum for them to be, literate. But that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah. I mean, we could go down
Move on.
that path. Now let's go back to slides.
Go back to slides.
And then with the color, because the kids all know you can change the font color, but with order, you can totally level this up here. You can fill it, use your little spilling paint bucket up here. Obviously, you can fill it with a solid color, but then, you talk them through the whole custom, and they can customize colors. But it's really the gradient that these kids gravitate towards. And it's almost like they see these colors in a whole brand new way. And I always say, guys, I'm going to choose red because it's my favorite color. Like, that's just what I always go to. And they're like, ooh, that's pretty. And then you show them how to go in, and they can add in like multiple colors, and they can change, like if it's a center swirl or, if it's slanted. And they really, once you show them that there is more, they totally suck it up. And there's very little that I have to do at that point other than, kind of keep an eye on that clock and, okay, you've got like 2 more minutes. Let's get your name done and let's move on to, oh, do you see the pencil next to it?
Yeah.
We can outline,
yeah.
talking about the thickness of the outline. And, so then they see this, new toy. And I mean, just word art can really put a little bit more oomph into whatever you're doing in Google Slides. And I feel like we stick to the tried and true text boxes too often. And there's so much more. And
I totally agree. I think it's limiting the kids to a point, when you show them even what's available, because I'm in the same boat as you. Like I showed the kids Google Drawings, and I showed them similar tools that you're going over now. And they were amazed. They were like, oh, this is cool. And I let them play. And this is middle school too. They're playing with the colors and the thickness of the border and the fonts and everything. Like, it's new to them. And if we don't show them, then they're not going to know, because they're not going to explore it on their own. Most of them won't,
Right. And then you'll have a couple, and then theirs will look different than everybody else's. And then they'll be like, well, how did you do that?
How'd you do that? Yeah.
And that's great. I love when the kids start sharing with each other. But I also think if we want them, and how many presentations do you, and I know like our jobs are kind of not the norm, but I think of all of the teachers and this whole remote hybrid, even if we're in person, the digital activities, the digital stuff that we're creating and we're doing, we are using the computer, and slides is, like I said at the beginning, such a versatile tool. Like you could pretty much do everything in slides that you needed to do in your classroom. And if you only ever had text on that 16:9, it's going to be kind of boring.
And that's what the kids are going to replicate too. You have to model. So
exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I'm right there with you.
All right.
What's your next tip?
Linking the slides in the presentation. So I'm going to get out of this presentation mode. And this, again, when I learned, I think by and large, most of us know how to create hyperlinks, or that the idea of creating a hyperlink so that it goes to something else. When I learned that I could, what I call, force the navigation in a slides, a deck or a presentation or an activity, whatever you want to call it, my mind was blown. I was like, wait a minute, what? So if they pick this, I can just link it to a particular slide. And this leads into nicely to choice boards that a lot of teachers are creating, or using Google Slides as a means to, here's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday work, forcing that navigation. If you click on Tuesday, it's going to take you down to the Tuesday work. And when I learned that you could do that, again, it feels so simple to me now, but I know that until you know something, you don't know it. So I don't have a link on 4. So you can see the difference. I've already linked number 1 tip. I haven't linked number 4's tip. So to do that, I love the keyboard shortcuts. So I'm on a Mac, so it's Command K. If you're on a Chromebook or a PC, it's Control K, or you use the little chain link up here, or you can come over to insert. I mean, there's like, what, 25 different ways that you can do all of these things. And then you see this little drop down here, the slides in the presentation. And I was just actually showing this to a teacher the other day where I said, you could take her image that she had put in there. We linked one out to a website that she needed to go to. And then she created a little text box. And I said, now you can link that text box to another slide where you put that activity. And she was like, wow, you know, like, yeah, you can force that navigation, get the kids right to where they need to be. They don't have to scroll through. Some of our slide decks get pretty lengthy, right?
Yeah, they do. They do. Yep.
Yeah. So let's go through 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to click slide 6. And now it's going to apply that. And when you click on that clear transparent shape in present mode, you go right to that particular slide. So here's tip number 4. We skipped over, no, we just did 3. So now it's taking us to 4 of using the gray space. But using that linking to the slides, it doesn't just have to go out somewhere. And that's a great piece to be able to do in slides. But again, working with like the primary elementary kids, there's a lot of value in keeping them right where you need them to be. Keep them right here instead of going out to here and there and there. You know, let's just keep them right here where we need them to be. They'll get lost in the digital space as well as if you were to just send them out into the building. And
we all get distracted once we get off task. So, you know, it's good to keep them, like you said, in one resource, or, you know, to me, that's like a hyper slide, like, you know, how we have hyperdocs. It's like a hyper slide. You have, you know, you have your slide deck, and then you're directing the kids to go to certain areas, like you said, a choice board, or, you know, a learning menu, you know, whatever the terminology is, it's basically hyper slides. And you're keeping your kids really focused on the task that they are supposed to be doing, or the activity that they're supposed to be doing. So this is a great tip. I used Google Slides for my virtual back to school night presentation. And that's what I did. You know, we had the team of teachers make Bitmojis.
Right.
And when they clicked on their team from the main slide, it went to the team slide with all the team teacher Bitmojis. And then when they clicked on the Bitmoji, it opened up their video.
Right.
So, you know, like you said, you can keep them in there, or you can have them open up a different, you know, resource or whatnot. But this is a great way of utilizing slides, because you can add, you know, your choice board right in here and have your links right in here. You don't have to include another application, or you don't have to include another platform. Everything's right in there. It's just easy. It's like a one-stop shop,
right?
You know, resource.
And like you were talking about your back to school slide deck, I think of the parents, and I think teachers make the assumption that the parents are as comfortable with this technology as we are. And what I've noticed is that the more you go here and there and there and there, the parents don't know how to get back. And then you've just lost them, you know, because then whatever, I don't have time for this. And I always try to remind my teachers, like, let's be respectful of everybody's time. I try to be respectful of everybody's time. If I can make it a smoother, you know, ride,
transition, or
I'm going to do that. And the clear transparent shapes that are a little bit larger, linking in the slides. This next tip that I just linked, using the gray space for kids. Again, here's where slides is not just a presentation. I'm going to give a shout out to Dan Stitzel. He's a tech teacher kind of guy, coach. I don't know his exact title, here in Ohio, up by Jake Miller. And he had shared out this Halloween activity board. So I borrowed some of his ideas, but my media specialist wanted to go into the kindergarten classrooms. And I said, hey, this is a great drag and drop activity. So what I mean by the gray space is all of that stuff over on the side.
Oh, okay. I got you now. Yeah, I was like, what are you talking about? Okay, good. I'm glad that you cleared that up.
Yeah, all that space out there. And you can see on the little thumbnails that if I were to print, this is not an activity that is meant to be printed, but if it were to print, anything that you have over in the gray space is not going to get printed. So I love encouraging teachers, put stuff out there, put your directions out there, little icons like my little ghosts over here, or links, resources, help. Use that, even use the speaker notes. I've come to really appreciate the speaker notes. Like that could be your directions in large part. And then if you have, this is especially good too, when you don't want students just going out and randomly selecting icons or pictures or whatever. If you want to kind of help guide that, especially when you're thinking about the younger students, number one, that's a lot of time to figure out where do we go to find this good image, or where can we find these things? And you're talking about kids that are still really working on becoming solid readers. So again, pick your purpose of your activity, but then something as simple as this, move 4 ghosts over to the black mat. Do this as a whole class activity. It can be a lot of fun, but it's also teaching our youngest learners some of these skills that they're going to need. And I see a lot of teachers give the little ones the mice. Our devices are a bit on the older side, so the trackpads aren't stellar. They're not the best, but I'll tell teachers, like, don't even bother with the mice for this one. Don't bother with the trackpad. Get them to click on a ghost, get that cute little blue box. I said, then teach them about the arrows. Okay, let's move the ghost.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
To the right. And if you hold it down, they move really fast. You know, and if they want to arrow down, you can move them down. So you're also kind of incorporating directional words, but the kids they're not necessarily thinking about that specifically, but there's one ghost. Okay, well, now we need to go grab another ghost. So click on another ghost. Kids, does it matter which ghost you pick? No.
Yeah.
No, they pick whatever one they want. I just found one. I used Dan's one ghost and I duplicated it. Now I purposely gave them more so the kids have to do the counting.
Right.
You know, but depending on, you know, what your ultimate goal is.
I like that you suggested that, because I think people, they don't utilize that space. And I never seen people utilize the speaker notes. You know, nevertheless, the gray space around the slide. So it's nice that you pointed that out, because it's more room for you to give directions or guidance. And then I love the tip with the arrow keys. I love that, because, you know, when you're dealing with, you know, the youngsters, some of them don't have that fine motor skills. So to tell them to click, they can do that, but to click and hold and drag is a whole different story. So to use the arrow keys, I think that's a great tip for the young kids.
Clicking and dragging for the first couple of months of kindergarten.
It's like torture.
It is painful. And then they think that they're solving the problem by giving them the mouse. But these kids also don't know how to use the mouse. And
they don't know left click, right click either. They don't know their left and right.
They are constantly clicking on the rolly ball, and they're like, it's not doing anything. Miss Kiefer. It's, you know, some of them, you know, they cry because they're frustrated. And I'm like, let's take that part out. Just click on that cute little ghost and use your arrow keys. I mean, if you want to really talk left and right, put a few on each side, you know, however you want. But can I also, I didn't even think about this, but the speaker notes. I worked with a group of 4th graders. I would go in very regularly, and I showed them how to do the voice typing in Docs. Well, they did some activities with Google Slides, and they were like, Mrs. Kiefer, how can I do that in Google Slides? And I was like, well, you can't just, create a text box and then voice type in Google Slides. And I think it was a student that pointed this out, that if you click on, I think it's insert, no, where is it?
I think it's in tools, right? Is it in tools?
And it's
voice
the voice
typing
speaker notes. So I had this one boy who loved and really used the voice typing in Google Docs, really to his advantage. And it made me so happy. But then he was a little bummed when he realized that slides didn't work as easily. And I was like, well, voice type it in Google Docs and then copy and paste it over. And I think he stumbled on this. He's like, well, can I do this? And I was like, try it out. So he did. And all it will do, I'm just going to go ahead and click on it because it works the same. But when you click on it and then you click the speaker, it's going to just type it down there in the speaker notes. So after he had done all of that, he's like, okay, now what? And I was like, well, how are you going to get it up onto your slide? And he was like, oh, I could copy and paste it.
Yep. See, he's making the workarounds.
Yeah.
That's great.
So
yeah.
For these students who really need that because of his needs in education, he had so many good ideas, but the typing was the hindrance for him. Being able to do that it's game changer.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'm going to give you a tip.
Yep.
I had Mike Murata on a couple of weeks ago, and he shared. Now he's a big accessibility guy, special education person, and he's always accommodating that group of population. So I'm going to have to share this link with you. So he shared that in Google Slides, what you do is you create a Google slide, okay, and you change the background to black. So the slide is black, and you put it on the closed captions. Then you open up a new window.
Okay.
And you open up your presentation. So just say it's your presentation that you're showing here. And you resize it so that the closed captions are up top, and then the presentation starts a little below that. Now, when you hit present for your presentation and you speak, the closed captions go across the top. And then your presentation, your content is being shown on the main, the main window. I'll have to share the link with you, but I was like, wow, that is awesome. And I did it. I'm like, this is great, because now you're accommodating accessibility, the contrast mode, closed captions, and it was really a game changer for me. So I'll share that video with you, definitely, so you can pass it along.
Yeah. Okay, I promise I've got one more.
We got one more.
One more sweet tip, but it's a lot of I've already talked about. The Halloween counting, use slides for more than just presentations. Like that's kind of where we started, and that's where I'll wrap it up. I showed you the Halloween counting, so any kinds of like drag and drops. I mean, think about your Venn diagrams, think about like your T-charts. You could have all kinds of consonants and vowels out to the sides, and asking the kids to manipulate, put all the vowels on the right side and put all the consonants on the left. It could honestly be, for math, various equations or formulas and all that jazz. I mean, really just once you get your
right? Anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this is my little baby. It's creating an app. So I'm the DC coordinator. I'm a code DC coordinator for our 8th grade trip, which we should be leaving tomorrow night, but we had to postpone based on everything that's going on. But we found more and more that we wanted to keep people in one spot. But I didn't necessarily want to just like put it out there on the web. So I created a Google Slides app that I used a lot of these tips. I formatted it so that it would fit more on a traditional phone. So more formatted for the portrait style. used word art, used images. So I wrote up a whole blog post about it. And I even gave a little template if people are interested. And you could see here's like the home page.
And that's a Google slide presentation.
Yeah, all it is a Google slide. So A, it's free, which worked really well for our budget. I mean, right?
Yeah.
B, like I created all of the little apps on the inside, the little icons on the inside, and it works very nicely with fat fingers. Like I have a fat thumb, so I'm constantly clicking on the wrong thing. The big tip was I put a big transparent shape over the whole slide and linked it back to itself. So if the home page is slide 3, I linked it to itself. So if you clicked anywhere down here, you stayed right where you were. You didn't advance on.
Right. So the person didn't know that, that it was that they clicked and went anywhere. Right.
Right. And then, when you click on each of these, it takes you to another slide. And I built some of them out. I created what I called like little hub slides. But I have a template in here that you can look at. And if this is something that appeals to you and it fits your budget, AKA free, which, it's great. And then, you can click through here and you can see where the little hand pops up.
That's a great way of using slides. I've seen people do similar presentations. They make their own app, and then they broadcast it through the school, through the school television broadcast or whatnot, and then the kids can access it either on their phone if they're allowed to have their phones in school, or even on their devices. So it's nice that it's in-house and you have the control over it. Like you don't have to call tech support or call somebody else to help you troubleshoot. Like that's actually a great you know what, you're giving me food for thought here with this. So I'm actually, you got my wheel spinning with it.
And I'm going to get your wheel spin a little bit more, because what I found out was when we were on the trip, and like we have bus information, so we have like seating charts on the bus, and then we have very specific information that we needed to know about. Let me get to, no, I don't have it on here. So we broke down all of the chaperone groups. Here's an example. So we had the girls and the boys, like we were constantly counting. How many kids do we have? How many are here? How many's with, and if we ever needed to split apart, like we could easily count, like you 5 are going there. Well, we got to the Capitol building and we had to very quickly count. I think it was like 25 and then the rest. Like we had 25 tickets that could go on in. So we had to count, and I was like, oh, this is sweet. I'll pull out my app and I counted, okay, the group of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, these 5, okay, you guys are all going. And my tour guide from the company, he looked over my shoulder. He's like, hey, that's really cool. And I said, yeah, it's a new Google slide, kind of nerdy, like I like it. And, but what I needed to do was add those numbers right next to the chaperone so that it was even faster, because some groups
didn't have to. Yeah.
So I said, I can do this. So I pulled out my phone, like we're in Washington, D.C. Like we're from Cincinnati. We're in Washington, D.C. I pull out my phone, pull out the Slides app so I can edit. And I pull up each one of these and I just go in and I type the number, and he's watching and he goes, so you're editing that right now? And I said, yeah, which I'm not going to tell you that it was, the best, but it worked.
It worked. Yeah.
And then anytime, or like the next time somebody opened up the app, it was 100% updated.
So here's my question now. So with this, did you publish it? Like, did you go into the file menu and publish the presentation, or did you just share it with anyone with the link can view? So like, how do you share it with your kids so that they have access to it?
So I did publish it to the web.
Okay.
I took that link, and because that's a really obnoxious link.
Yeah.
I used a URL shortener. I just used Bitly because that was the first one after, the goo.gl went away. I just started using Bitly, and which also kind of gave me a little bit of statistics on the back end. Like I could see how many clicks I had, which also made me feel good because how people were using it. But then I shared out that bit.ly, which again, it's a Google slide, and you can't specifically add individual people, and we're not sharing it with this huge, massive audience. But I will say the day that we put out the bus lists so that the kids could see which bus they were on, we were only able to get buses 1 through 4. This was a year that we took 5 buses. We were only able to get 1 through 4 done, and it was like 11:30 at night. And I was like, I have to go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. And I didn't think too much of it at all. Well, I'm not at the middle school any longer. My co-coordinator, Alyssa, is at the middle school. She teaches 7th and 8th grade social studies. So she called me in the morning. I'm driving to school because middle school starts earlier than elementary. And she goes, Sarah, I have a line of kids at my desk. And I was like, what's the matter? And she goes, it's all kids from bus 5.
The bus that you didn't put on.
And she goes, they want to know why theirs isn't on there. Like, oh my God, Alyssa. She goes, Sarah, I haven't made any announcements. She's like, do you understand what I'm saying? I was like, are they really mad? She goes, it's not about that. She said, they're using this. She said, I haven't made an announcement. We didn't push anything out. These kids are looking at it and we didn't even tell them to.
That's awesome.
And I was like, oh, they like it.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good.
You know, so
I'm gonna have to play with this year. Maybe this might be one of my goals that I can like create, because this isn't the first time I've seen this, and you're not the only person that had success with it that I've heard about. So it's definitely, yeah, Marilyn is saying it's a win. It's definitely a win. So if you can, try it, right? Like, so nothing's gonna happen. Try it, use a smaller scale and test it all out. And then, maybe you use it for like the lunch menu or school calendar or something like that. And then, you expand from there.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I wrote a second one, a school app. And if you think about the collaboration that we can now do with our students as a classroom teacher in Google Slides. So that one was specific for a trip, right? Like that's a big thing. That's
a lot of data.
But for a school app, like if you come, and I've got a little template here too, doing like exactly what you're saying, but letting the kids be part of it.
Yeah.
So you've got a class theme, blah, blah, blah. As the teacher, you fill out this important information. Maybe you have these particular major thought processes that you need to have, but here's the lunch menu. Maybe it's a PDF image that you've inserted on here. Maybe it's a link to your school website, whatever it is that you feel is appropriate. But you could also, like this homework one, you can see my little speech bubbles out here with further directions. If you go to the homework slide, let me see if I can get there real quick. Have the kids, I didn't make the template. So like say this is your homework slide. Have students, have this be one of their jobs, that they maintain this. What else do they want to see on here? What do their parents want to see on here? And let the kids be part of this whole creative and collaborative process. And think about the ownership that we could be teaching them, on top of the word art, on top of the linking, on top of the changing the slides and sizes and all that kind of stuff. Think how powerful that could really be for a lot of our students and their families.
Yeah, I agree. Now, did you share this blog post with me in the show notes?
Maybe.
Well, you're gonna have to share that with me, and then I'll put it in the show notes, so we can include that in with the your blog is on here, but not that blog post. So yeah, maybe you can share that link with me, and then I'll add it. I'll add it to the show notes for you, because I think it's important. Like, you're using it and it's practical, and it's, you got good feedback about it, and it's just thinking out of the box, right? Don't think of Google Slides as your regular presentation where people overload the slide. You want to, think of it out, out of the box. So This was great. I'm so glad that you shared all this information. I'm so happy that the 5 tips that you shared, I think were simple, they were productive, and people can use them. They weren't overwhelming. And I think that's important nowadays because we're so overwhelmed with so much other stuff that the things that you shared was really quick, simple, and things that they can do like right now. So I appreciate that, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me. And if I could, one more plug, like I read somewhere, I can't even remember where it was, and this kind of took me back because I love color. Anybody that knows me, I love color. I love lots of it. But it really kind of like stops me in my tracks that Google's main color is white. And I had to think about that for a minute, and I'm like, oh, so you mean like they don't? And then I started really paying attention to their slides, and honestly, it is that very simple. And they use, like one icon for effect. They use big text for effect. They might add in some images, but like you're saying, it's not an overwhelming amount of stuff in on one slide. And I think that makes everything feel a little bit more manageable to where if I put all 5 tips on one, which I could have easily done, right?
Yeah, then it just looks like a regular old-fashioned 1980s presentation.
Right, right.
All right, let's do 1990s instead.
My go-to has been, we're not living in 1995. Can we please stop teaching like we are?
Well, I think definitely, I think this whole COVID experience is going to really change how people teach, and it is already. And I think it's just you're not going to go back to the way we were teaching before. So,
no.
To take a positive out of this, I think that's one of the positive outlook. That's my opinion, but we'll see. Only time will tell. So
Absolutely.
we're all in this together. That's what my motto is. We got to pay it forward so that other people can benefit and learn and then ultimately teach their students so that they can be better productive citizens in society when they get older. So
exactly,
that's all we can do. Well, thank you, Sarah, for being on. I'm going to wrap up the show, and I'm going to share my screen really fast. So let me do that really quick. All right, can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so if you'd like to check out my website, you can go to thesweettalk.com, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel on Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast as well. You can check out the latest episode of the Sweet Talk. Alice Keeler and I wrote a new book. It's called Stepping Up to Google Classroom, and that's available on Amazon. That's geared for beginners. If you'd like to support my mission and help me pay it forward, you can become a sponsor. I'm really thankful that I have a few sponsors that supported my show this year. So I really appreciate that. Slides Mania, Screencastify, GAT Labs, and Cami. But you can certainly fill out the form, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Jamboard. A lot of people are asking me questions about Jamboard, and I have a page here on my website that you can check out my Jamboard presentation, my article, and also feel free to check out my idea board for Jamboard. It's basically, it gives you ideas on how you can use Jamboard in the classroom. And if you really want, you can share your idea with me, and we can pay it forward together. But really, the thing that I always update is my Wakelet collection. So you can check out the Wakelet collection about my Jamboard, and hopefully there's something in there that you can find that's helpful. But with that being said, I'm back. So that concludes our show for tonight. Thank you again, Sarah, for being on. It was a pleasure meeting you. It was fun, chatting with you about all this, technology and Google Slide tips. I really love it. I am going to attempt to create the app. I'm going to try something, and I'll let you know, and I'll share it with you. But
Good.
I definitely will share that link with you about the closed caption as well. I'll put that in the show notes too. So
good. That'll be awesome. Yeah.
yeah. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And until next time, have a great evening. And I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.